you some of the insights on how we can go and make our pulse production self-sufficient so that we are not importing, you know. And for that, what we need is the next generation advances so that we are able to transform the global pulse productions. Of course, when we talk about the global pulse production, I think India is the number one. Almost accounts for 25% of the total, global pulse production. So any advances made in India has a global impact. And we all know that when we talk about the pulses, then these are the crops which are not only for the production, or I should say for diversification, but all these are the crop for the people and for the planet. For the people, because they are very rich in protein, they are very high in micronutrients, as well as they have many health benefits. Similarly, is for the planet, because these are the crops which gives to the planet instead of taking out from the planet. For example, they are the one which can fix the atmospheric nitrogen by having association or symbiosis with the rhizobium. At the same time, they are also having less carbon footprints, less water footprints. So all these traits makes them a kind of crop for the planet, and as I say, for the people. So today, I am very thankful to the society that they have invited me to talk about that. So as you know that sometimes we say that why we should go for having more production. There are certain challenges, and that makes us that we must increase our production. As you know that if you just see the global agriculture for the last 70 years, I think we must be very thankful to our scientists and the farmers and different stakeholders that they have really transformed agriculture production from deficiency to self-sufficiency. But somehow that self-sufficiency has not happened across the crop. It has not happened across the countries. So there are some kind of mismatch, and that really makes us to make some correction in our way to come out with the better, better society. And then another reason for why we should have more production, because of that, as you know, that still the population is growing, and one estimate suggests that by 2050, the world population will grow to almost 9.2 billion. It means 37% more mouth than what we are feeding today. And to feed this 37 more mouths at the same time, demand supply gap which is existing even today, if we have to fix that, then the food production must increase by more than 60%. When I say that we have to increase our food production by more than 60% by 2050, and that has to be achieved under the climate change impact. As you know that extreme weathers are going to affect our crops. This year, you know that how much rainfall is happening, and that has I was in Bundelkhand, and many of the many of the districts, they have not even able to plant the crops. It means still our food production, it depends on many of those extreme weather conditions. And if I take into account the overall vulnerability of all these kind of extreme weather, sea level rise, and other kind of losses from biotic stresses, then you can see that the global south, when I say global south, then we are talking about those countries they are still developing. And you can see all those red red one, and they are going to be impacted much more. And one estimate of the FAO suggests that the crop yield will decrease by 25% if we are not going to address the climate change which I just talked about now. So for that, we have only one way to go, and that one way to go is that we have to produce more from less. We are our Prime Minister also says that we have to have more crop per crop. We have to have more crop with less, a kind of pollutions. We have to have many things we have to take into account. So it means we have only one way to go. And of course, we come to the pulses, I think, and when we talk about the sustainable food production and nutrition, I think then we look forward to the crops like pulses. Why pulses? I have, in my introduction, I told you why pulses are more important for the people and the planet. And this, slide shows you that the crop pulses has a less water footprint, less carbon footprint. Just take the example of water footprints. If we have to have 1 kg dal, it requires, I'm talking about from production, from sowing to harvesting and then coming to our plate. If I take total this cycle, it takes around 1250 liters of water to have 1 kg of dal. If I apply the same logic for 1 kg of chicken, then it takes more than almost 4 times more water than dal. And if I take mutton, then it takes 5 times more water than dal. And when it comes to beef, it takes 30, almost 10 times more water than the dals. Then you can see that how much, and we know that most of the area are now in dry areas. Almost 30, they are saying 32% area is dry area. And in that, if we have to take up the any crop, I think then pulses becomes very, very important because of the low water footprints. Now, the one you can see the carbon footprint. When you see that when we have taken pulses, other things, and when we have introduced lentil into the wheat system, one can see that the water and the carbon footprint is in minus, almost 552 as compared to other systems. It means when we have legumes in wheat system, then they are sequestering more carbons than emitting the carbons. That is the kind of advantage. And of course, in the last, as I say, that 70 years, we have made very good progress. But at what cost? It is the cost of the soil health. I think again, if we have to restore our soils, I think then legumes become very, very important components because it is not only about the physical and chemical health of the soil, but also biological health of the soils. And that really mainly because of the kind of nitrogen they are fixing from the atmosphere. You know that when we talk about the pulses, so we are not talking about one crop. We are talking about number of crop, about the dozens of crop. In India, I think we must be very proud that we are not growing one crop. We are growing so many of pulses, and you can see that the area, some of the pulse area has gone down. Like in the case of field pea, fava bean, and grass pea area has come down, but lentil and chickpea area has gone up, and of course all the kharif pulses, the area under those crop has gone up. You see this global status of the pulses, of course, as I said, that India is number one. Then, of course, then comes the Canada and many Australia, China, Russia, and the Nigeria. These are the crops which are coming. These are the countries which are major contributor to the pulse production. If this graph shows that the last 50, 60 years, then the production of pulses has almost doubled, more than doubled, without doubling the area. And that has happened mainly because of the yield of all pulses has gone up, and that's why the production of all pulse crop is increasing. And just yesterday we had this launch of a book by the Niti Aayog. They call it this strategy for path and pathways for accelerating growth in pulse towards goal of Atmanirbhar. And in fact, during that, honorable member of Niti Aayog, Professor Ramesh Chand, mentioned that last 10 years, in fact, we are not talking about the success with the pulses has achieved almost 5.3% annual growth rate as compared to any other crop, which is less than 3%. So that kind of increase has happened in the pulses in the last 10 years. And of course, when it comes to India, I think these are the five states which are contributing to almost 72% of total pulse productions. Of course, it is Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and then Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and Gujarat. And then at present, the total pulse production in India is around 25 million tons. And of course, Madhya Pradesh is the leading one, followed by Rajasthan, Maharashtra, UP, and Gujarat. But then question comes, how much area is under irrigated? All is 23%, and 77% of the pulse area is rain fed. And it is not only rainfall, but also these are the area, marginal area, where the soil is not good. So all those challenging, things are there. As a result, what is happening? The average pulse productivity of India is 26% less than what is the global average. Of course, within the country, if I say the share of the total, share of different pulse crops in the total pulse production, of course, chickpea account for almost 50%, followed by 16% of pigeon pea, and then old bean, mung bean, and plantain. So these are the five major crops which account for more than 90% of the total pulse production, and other crops or other pulse crops account for less than 10%. Even after being the largest producer, largest consumers, and largest importer. Why we are importing? Because we are importing because there is still a lot of demand supply gap of pulses in India. And that continues and that will widen if we are not going to increase our pulse production. At present, we say that the pulse contributes around 40% to the agricultural import basket. And 2024, India imported 4.74 million tons of pulses. And this was, if I say which pulses, then it's the lentil, pigeon pea, and black gram. And why it is that that the this we are importing, and why we are having less production, so and that why we are not able to meet the local demands. It is mainly because there are certain challenges, and if I group them in the current challenges in pulse production, then I take these four as the major one. Climate change, that impact the all these factors of climate, like rainfall pattern, and then temperature rise, and all these things are impacting pulse productivity and farming practices. It is not only pulses, I think it is impacting across the agriculture production. Then of course soil degradation. Again, we have talked about soil health, and one estimate suggests that 33% of the global soil, yeah, it is degraded. And that when soil degraded, it is impacting the land productivity and total factor productivity. And of course, in the case of pulses, I could say that still we have been not as successful in developing technology as we have been in rice and wheat. The lack of appropriate technology, I think that is where also in some of the area we have to work. And even after having so many varieties and having so many, production technologies, coming out from our national system and international systems, still there are wide yield gaps, almost 30-35% in pulses. How we can bridge this gap? That is also a big challenge for all of us. And we know that the pulses are being impacted by weeds. If you go to, we don't still have any good herbicides which can control the broadleaf weeds in pulses. As a result, either you have to go for manual, and which is very very costly affairs, and sometimes you don't have labor. As a result, pulses, if you just take into account, I think beats I always consider the number one. And as a result, we are not able to maintain the population in the per hectare, the number of plants per hectare. As a result, it really impact the productivity. So now, if we have to bridge this demand supply gap, what should be our strategy? I think Niti Ayog also have talked about those things. So strategy for enhancing pulse production, I think we have to think in terms of how can we make the new genetic gains. What are the genetic options? What are the new varieties? How these new varieties should come out from that, very quickly, very efficiently, at the same speedily. As I mentioned, there are almost 30% to 35% yield gaps. How we can close those yield gaps? It means it requires much better crop management practices, good agronomic practices, horizontal expansion. There are certain areas where we have no competition, like rice fallow. Can we think of taking pulse into that one? Can we think of taking pulse into sugar cane based intercropping? So these are some of the opportunities where we can think of. Then sustainable intensification. Even now, with the availability of the super early maturing pulse varieties, can we think of bringing those pulses into rice system between two rice, in particular northeast and some of the country like Bangladesh, where rice is taken as in the Kharif season, and then again it is in the Rabi season as you borrow rice. And between that, there is a window of 90 days. Can we think of having those early maturing varieties of these pulses in those rice system? So this is another one. Then of course, even after having good yield, I think post-harvest losses pulses are also huge, around 16%. How can we reduce those losses? That is another one, and that is you know, and then of course value additions. There are a number of opportunities. When I go to China and many countries, they have come out with these value-added products. For example, this sprouted moon beans. It goes to the Japan from China. They are importing from India and many other countries this moonbeam, and then they do this value addition sprouting, and then they are selling into the international market at a very high price. Maybe moonbeam price is, let us say, 100 rupees, but when you go for a sprouted one, they are selling maybe 1000 rupees of the same quantity. So those are the opportunities how that we have to think of. So if I say the genetic options, I think if I take into account the historical genetic gains in pulse crops, we have come out globally more than 4,000 varieties of major pulse crops. And out of that 1200, more than 1200 are in India. Of course, some of the varieties like short duration resistant climate smart varieties have done a good job in some of the regions. That's why, the pulses which used to be the main crop in North India, now they have shifted into Central and South India, just because you have the short duration varieties. These are the varieties which can tolerate the, fusion build. They are the one which can, do better even under the less, water availability. So all these things has made these crops shifting to central India and South India. But then, if I take into account the overall global pictures, still the genetic gain has been less than 1% per year. And if we have to meet the future demand, which we have mentioned, I think we need to accelerate our genetic gains at the rate of 1.5%. And that genetic gain has to come with rapidly, precisely, and efficiently. I will not take much time to talk about this modernizing the breeding pipelines, but I think there must be some of the people who are breeders. I think there are this classical genetic gain equations that says that we have to think in terms of the genetic variance, operational efficiency, and selection intensity, accuracy, and generation interval. How fast we can come out. So these are the things which I am going to talk in few slides, but then that is where the progress can be made. Lot of opportunities are there in all the four sections. So I will be talking about what changes we have brought into our breeding programs and which has really helped us to accelerate the genetic gains. First paradigm shift which we have made to accelerate the genetic gain was market-oriented breeding product profiles for well-defined target population models. Earlier, we used to make some crosses based on the traits, but now we identify the markets and then agroecology and what are the traits which are required to replace a present variety which is being grown by the farmers. Based on that, I think now we are having very targeted breeding programs so that we have a very targeted varieties or breeding material which can perform well even when we start making crosses. That time we have that kind of things in our mind. Then continuous incremental gain through parents of high breeding value. We always try to bring the new parents with high breeding value as fast as possible into our breeding pipelines. So that is also helping us to go for continuously incremental gains in our breeding programs. Then Another paradigm shift which we have taken into our bidding programs is shifting from subtle bidding to speed bidding. Subtle bidding used to you know help us to take up two generations per year, but with speed bidding we are taking up to four generations per year. It means we are able to complete the bidding cycle much faster than what we were able to do in the past. Then, of course, we are also now, most of the bidding programs in our institute. Now it is genomic assisted bidding programs, mainly genomic selections, so that it can increase the bidding efficiency. As I was saying, that market-oriented bidding product profiles. So here I have mentioned some of the crops: chickpea, farm, lentil. These are the targeted product profiles which we have developed. Six for chickpea, five for fawin, four for lentil, and two of grass peas. And these are some of the traits which are very, very important if we have to take up these crops. So I have given here the example of lentil. So if we have to go, let us say, for South Asia, I think then here farmers want small red lentils, not like what North Africa where they want large yellow lentils. Here in India, we need some very fast maturing varieties. Whereas in other places, if I go to West Asia, they need the variety which can take much longer time to mature. Our varieties in South Asia or India, we need to ensure that there is a resistance to the wind, rust, and stem blight. Whereas in the case of West Asia, they require another kind of things like ascochyta blight resistance. They need a variety which are having resistance to oromonkey. It is a kind of parasitic weeds. So so based on that traits, we are making the process, and that is how our targeted weeding product comes out. Then how bidding products will come out. But from here, for that we must have a global germplasm. We at Icada Gene Bank, we are having a global germplasm of our crops like lentil have more than 14,000 accessions, chickpea 15,000 plus accessions. So this kind of material, and this is the really a kind of material which houses the traits which I mentioned into the previous slides. So we just how we can get those states in that, how I can find out that this particular accession is having that particular traits. For that, we go for the precise phenotyping. We also do genotyping for allelic variations. Then we are using them into our breeding programs. So for any national programs which are interested to take this material, I think we provide them fixed sets. We call it focused identification of germplasm. It means it is the if you say that I am looking for drought tolerant varieties, then I will provide you germplasm from those areas which are frequently affected by the droughts. It means the germplasm collected from that region has more chance of having drought tolerance than the germplasm coming from area where drought has not have occurred. So that way we try to provide the germplasm instead of randomly sending you the germplasm. Then we also provide you the genetic diversity panels, magic populations, and crop biorelatives and introduction lines, which we have developed by using the crop biorelatives in our breeding programs. And of course, every year we are having the space and international studies, which online anybody can make the request and get those lines. I give you one example how this, sometimes this novel alleles, they come from the wild relatives. We have used this particular wild species of lentil, Lens orientalis, in our breeding programs. You can see by using that, the yield has increased by 40%. At the same time, these lines were also having high iron, sorry, high iron and zinc content. So some of the lines, are now already released in Morocco, and some are now in the pipeline in India. Then, as I say that having jump laws, having breeding lines, how we must increase the accuracy, selection accuracy. And that's possible when we have a precision platform for phenotyping. So we have developed a very fully automated control system for phenotyping in Morocco. And this can combines both above ground and below ground, physiology traits. and that provides a very fast, very accurate kind of phenotyping for the traits we are interested. This is very good for particularly for drought tolerance and to identify the germ plasms which have drought tolerance traits. So those kind of things are very much required for our breeding programs. And of course, this particular machine we call it phenomobile system, phenobuggy. This machine can take more than 100 traits at a time. It's once you run it, that give you how many plants you are having in a plot and what is the total biomass. It can give you how much the height, plant height, and that everything it counts. And that data is connected. This machine is connected with our computer, so all the data is readily available to us. So that gives you very precise, estimation of yield, very precise estimation of traits which we are phenotyping. As I was saying that rapid generation advancement. Earlier we used to take maximum two generations. Today we are taking 4 to 5 generations, and that was best possible by creating structures, and then we are also doing the changing the growing conditions, and that's how it was possible. That instead of 5 years, now we are having the final products in 3 years. Then genome analysis very very important. So all our crops have been analyzed, and here I am giving you one example of fava bean, where we have gone for this genome assembly of short bean petal fava bean with high gene annotations. Genome size is around 11.77 gigabytes, 8 directed. So all those analysis really help us to go for genomic assisted breeding programs. Another example is genomic selections for drought and heat tolerance. Again, for that we have gone for assessing more than 4,000 genotypes using 192 cast markers, and we have identified 26 SNPs markers which are highly associated with drought tolerance. All these things really help us to go for having a prediction accuracy of the traits, and that really help us to go for having efficiently, in a very early generation, you can make the selection of our material so, to take them forward. And then now we are also using our this artificial intelligence for genomic selections. For that, we have under this project, we have developed a automated AI pipeline so that it helps us to select the best gene bank material, best the breeding lines as a result. And of course, when we are doing this, we are combining the data which we get from GBAs, from genomic selections and artificial selection. All these things are put together to come out with the right kind of material which we should deploy into our breeding programs. And of course, then we go for this in-house, data processing pipelines. Nowadays, any program, any bidding program must be having a data-driven. And for data-driven, you must have the quality of data. And that quality of data can come when you have that, a data high throughput, data processing pipelines. That is very, very important. That's how we are able to reduce the cost. We are able to save the time, and that's how now we are having to take a better decisions in our bidding programs. Of course, genome editing is another area we are working. So I take example of grass pea. As you know, the grass pea is one of the most climate smart crop among pulses. But then it has a problem of having this plant toxin called audit. So we are developing variety which are free from this audit. And for that, we are going for genome, for that we have a system in place. We are targeting 3 genes, and that will help us to come out with the lines, most probably. Of course, this work is being done in collaboration with the Queensland University of Technology, Australia, and Johns centers. So after applying all those things, we can talk about some of the products which are already there. That short duration varieties. These are the variety of lentil which can mature 90 to 100 days. And now we have some of the variety, even they are maturing in less than 90 days. I think they are in the pipelines. They will be available for our partners. Once we have these short duration varieties, the best that the advantage they have is that they skip the terminal drought and heat. And at the same time, they also fits well in rice and maize-based systems. And at the same time, though there is a reduce in the crop cycle, but there's no yield penalty. Still, they are able to give you 1.5 to 2 tons per hectare gain yields. So some of the varieties are already there in the pipe, lines. They are already popularized in the different countries. So I mentioned some of them here. In India, you know that biofortified, the varieties of lentil which are having almost double of the iron and zinc, they have come out, and these are variety which can mature in 100 days, and then having all those things. So they are already there, and then they are being now the seed chain. One can see some of the lines, video seed production is very high. It means they are the one which are being preferred by the national partners now. Of course, Ekada does not release varieties. We just provide the opportunity our national partner to make selection from our material, use our material into their own breeding programs, and then these are the products developed by our national partners, but then they have the germ plas provided by us. And then now the another one which is coming is the machine harvestable lentils. And of course, now we have released one variety in Morocco, and now this year onwards, we will be having a in India also now machine harvestable trials in all India, this programs, and I'm sure that in a few years, maybe 2 3 years, you will have this machine harvested lentils in India as well. So now it is not only that we have to have better varieties. I think we also have to have a better sustainable production, or I should say management. So it means we have to have a complete from demand to delivery kind of pipelines, and for that we have to use as much as information in while we are selecting a crop and when we are selecting a variety. So for that, we have the crop suitability map, variety suitability map, and of course for that we are using real-time, GIS, models, multi-criteria analysis, and that is how we say that which crop and which variety is suitable in which particular region, and then we are also thinking in terms of farming practices, and they are also mainly precision, precision farming systems, optimum user inputs, how so all those things are taken into account when we are saying what are the best practices which can help us to to realize the potential of the varieties in our farms. Then post-harvest, management, that is also, so we have to link our produce into the market, and for that, and once we have that whole, demand to delivery system, I think, and it is based on the data driven. I think then the model is economically viable and ecological sustainable. And for that, I give you one example of this real-time mapping and monitoring of target site for spray intention in West Bengal. And there we have, this is real time. One can say which, if we have planted, let us say rice variety, short duration or mid duration or long duration. Based on that, what is the moisture in the soils after the harvest of rice, which which legumes can fit into the system, whether within this particular, let us say, crop, then which variety can fit into that. Within that also, depending on whether you have irrigation facility or not, then there is a suggestion one can go for. So that kind of things are required to really go for realizing the potential of pulses in our farms. And as I also mentioned about the precision farming, and for that we have to think in terms of optimizing the inputs and enhancing the smaller farmers' income. For that we have developed this Krishi app in for Madhya Pradesh farmers under a project, and that take into account different kinds, soil indices, elevation maps, soil moisture sensors, weather stations, all these things taken into account, and that really help us to go for very precision farmings, like smart water management, smart planning, smart fertilization, smart detection and sensing. And by applying that, and some of the farmers feel yield has gone by 8 to 10%. Income has increased by 25, 30%. At the same time, the use of pesticide fertilizer has gone down by 15, 20%. So that kind of the things when you think when we are going to integrate the this digital agriculture by and then that will help not only to increase the yield and income but also reduce the or I should say cost of cultivation of a particular crop. And this is one slide which I really always like. This is I have downloaded from the internet, and that is based on the what is meta analysis. They found that if we take into account of our impact of innovations on food production, and if I take the time zone from 1960 to 2020, one can say that the global crop production has increased by 390%, with land use increasing by just 10%. Just imagine that had there not been the yield increase, then how much land would have been required? It means that would have been almost 3.9% land use, isn't it? And that is how we were able to beat the population growth rate, which has increased by 2.6x. So I can say that innovations in agriculture is very, very important to make India or any country self-sufficient in food productions. Of course, it is not only the crop genetics, but also combining the good economic practices and also thinking in terms of system productivity, thinking in terms of the soil health. All these things have to be taken into account. Then with this kind of impact can be made. Then, if I see the prospect, or summarize what I have just talked about, all these things are the components, which really help us to increase the production. And for that, we have to ensure that there is increased technological integration now. We have to, I think this is very, very important. I think I always say this is the key to adopt next gen technology in cultivation for improving efficiency and productivity. Second thing is global collaboration. Today, you cannot do alone everything. I think if you have more partnerships, I think there's no need to go for duplication. Once we work together as one, I think that can really help us to enhance the knowledge, that can really help us to share the resources to come out with the better product. And once we have all this, I think that really help us to go for enhanced sustainability. I think with the focus on sustainable practices, I think we need to drive initiatives that promote next gen technology for this. With this, I'm very thankful to all of you for your